This week on Head to Head, we have new comic series Skywalker Saga on 4K, and I think we're in trouble. It starts right now.
You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Darryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this podcast. So there's a lot going on in Star Wars right now.
Yes, sir.
In fact, there's actually a lot going on everywhere. Last week, I just happened to catch The Birds of Prey.
Okay.
The new Harley Quinn movie.
Yeah. How was it?
It was good. It was actually good. You know, it was funny because you know how DC now is moving into the whole like R-rated, movies. So it did have some of that same like dark comedy grittiness. A little bit more languagey.
Okay.
And just like a little bit darker, I guess, overall in tone, even though it was actually funny.
Right.
Like, I mean, it was hilarious. There were certain things that were so funny in the movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're dealing with Harley Quinn. I mean, like, Harley Quinn is that kind of...
Yeah, but I mean, from some of the other characters, though. That's what made it actually great. I mean, was it Rosie Perez? I think she plays the cop.
Oh, Montoya?
Yeah.
Renee Montoya. Yep.
She was hilarious.
Okay.
You know, so a lot came from her, a lot came from Huntress, a lot came from, some of the other characters. And of course, Margot Robbie is Harley is just perfect.
Yeah. Perfect
casting, in my opinion. But, it's one of those movies that I would definitely recommend people go and see. And it was interesting because, they would talk about and reference the Joker throughout the whole movie. And of course, they're talking about Jared Leto's Joker. But I couldn't also help but think of Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, too.
Yeah, Joaquin, or even Heath Ledger. I mean...
Yeah, but I only say that because, this iteration of Harley Quinn never interacted with him. Well, it didn't interact with Joaquin, but the only reason why I bring him up is because, obviously...
He's the most current.
He's the most current one.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I mean, I really want to check it out. It's weird to see that Renee Montoya, because in different depictions, like, she's kind of seen as like the really good cop, but then there's in other depictions, she's kind of seen as one of those corrupt cops. So you're kind of like, because it's kind of weird. Like in the animation, she's always seen as the by the book kind of person, whereas Harvey Bullock has always kind of been the kind of on the edge kind of cop. So in this, see her kind of working with the villains. And I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know if she's just kind of in a situation where she kind of has to just depend on Harley Quinn in this particular adventure, or she really has just become the crooked cop. So I'm interested to see.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think you'll really enjoy what they've done with the characters in this one.
Sweet.
All right, well, once again, it's time to leave the movie theater and head to the old cantina.
Yes, sir. All right, so since we're in the cantina, February is Black History Month. And of course, we have a lot of African Americans who've been a part of the Star Wars universe, namely, of course, Billy D. Williams playing Lando Calrissian, and then, of course, John Boyega picking up the mantle as Finn. But there is a particular individual that I would like to bring up that a lot of people really don't know anything about, and quite frankly, I didn't know about it until you actually sent it to me. So,
and I didn't know anything about it until I just happened to read an article about it. I mean, it was a name that I actually heard, but didn't really connect it until. And
it's funny because, like, of course, the name is Ashley Boone Jr., which when you first hear the name, until you hear Junior, you really did think it's a woman. But really, it's this brilliant guy who actually kind of helped champion a lot of things in Star Wars. I mean, quite frankly, we wouldn't have.
Yeah, I was going to say we wouldn't even have Star Wars if it wasn't for this guy. And then it turns out that his whole way of marketing movies and everything was pretty much ahead of his time.
Yeah, it's kind of on that cutting edge type thing, and he kind of went to school for something as far as marketing and things of that nature, and then he never thought he would land in this particular realm. And unfortunately, he passed at a very early age. He only died at 55 years old.
Yep.
But
unfortunately, it was like in between. What was it, like 94 or something like that?
Yeah, he passed in 94.
Yeah, so he didn't even get to see the prequels.
Right.
Some may think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, and he's pretty much championed. He became like one of the first black presidents, and he kind of in that in the movie industry, and so it's really just fascinating just to kind of see the type of person that he was, how he marketed things such as the James Bond series and things and marketing things across different continents like China and whatnot. So we really do have to tip our hats to Mr. Ashley Boone Jr. for actually helping bring Star Wars to life for us. I mean, so that's just kind of my moment in Black history. So that's cool.
That's good. Well, and it's good to honor, and a lot of times, rightfully so, we honor all these, heroes of civil rights or, whatever. But there's a lot of these guys that are overlooked that, had a huge impact. I mean, when you really stop and think about it, there would have been no Star Wars without this guy.
Yeah. I mean, everybody thinks George Lucas and, JJ and all the big names that you see kind of out in the front, but it's those people in the background who really kind of help, push this thing forward. And we do have to, acknowledge Mr. Ashley Boone.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you guys haven't had a chance or this is the first year hearing of him, do yourselves a favor and actually go look up this guy and, look at his life and pretty much everything that he's done. So, yeah, tip of the hat to Ashley Boone. What do we got next?
All right. So I was thinking, the way Star Wars has kind of been going on, we've always kind of talked about different things as far as, what kind of stories would we like to see? There's a different, we already kind of started with The Mandalorian. So that's been kind of a cool thing that we've kind of really gotten into. And I know a lot of people really want to see that. And we've often talked about the Game of Thrones version kind of the Old Republic for that. But I've always thought what would be really cool, and especially after reading the book, Master Apprentice? Yeah, Master Apprentice. I would really love to see like a Padawan series, because that would be really cool to actually, because we've always often talked about the trials. Like, we've never seen that. But in the book, you kind of start to read a lot that went into those trials, and they're quite strenuous. Like, they put you kind of like in these life or death kind of situations.
Yeah, I remember they covered it a little bit on Rebels, I believe it was.
Yeah, a little bit, yep.
And even then, you're just kind of like, man, this is pretty intense.
Yeah, you got to build your own lightsaber. Then they kind of put you in these situations where you really have to, it tests you mentally, physically, emotionally, all the things that you would have to deal with as far as being a Jedi. So I thought that would be a really, really cool series.
So you're thinking like a Disney Plus kind of thing.
Yeah, like that would be a really good series to kind of really get into. It's like you kind of take this kid who's, okay, maybe they're just gotten to the age where now, okay, they're no longer quite a youngling per se, but then now they're at the point where it's like, all right, maybe between the ages of maybe 10 and 11 years old. And then now they're kind of really starting to become,
yeah, I was going to say, you wouldn't want to pick it up where they were too young.
Right. Because then it's like,
it wouldn't even be that interesting.
Exactly. Like learning their
Daddy
ABCs or something.
For Jedi or whatever, it's like.
Yeah. But I think it would be really cool. Like, if you kind of catch them like around 12, 13 years old. And it's like, okay, that's when a lot of kids really start to develop their personalities and things like that. And you kind of show their maturation through a course of them trying to become a Jedi. And I think that would be a really interesting thing, because you really can see all the different things that kind of go, and it goes into becoming a Jedi. And then you can kind of really get an appreciation for your Obi-Wans, your Qui-Gons and stuff like that, where, you really kind of see like, man, like these guys really have to go through a lot. So now when you see them as full Jedi Knights or even become Jedi Masters, you're like, all right, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
now.
What would actually be cool is if they took, if they created a new character, right? And you saw that, and then it picked it up in maybe another series or maybe in a future movie, and now you see that character as a full-blown Jedi.
Yeah, that would be
That would be cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, but the thing is, though, you'd have to be careful. Like, so would you suggest they pick somebody that maybe we know?
No. I would want
like all new?
All new. I think that would be the cool thing, and it doesn't trap you. So
yeah,
you
because I
can
was going to say, because the problem with that is that if you do pick somebody that we actually know, it's like, well, now you're going to be cornered, story wise, or it would have to take place during a certain time, or
it would be cool, like if you kind of show like Ayla Secura or something like that, like they're kind of maybe have a hand in their training at one point, or they have like a cameo appearance or something like that. Like maybe Master Plo Koon is walking around and he kind of gets some
you would
advice.
have to, because if you're talking about, Padawans during what we would consider the classic Jedi period, it has to obviously Because that's when they were, even though there was a lot of years they were around.
Yeah, but a lot of those characters, their species lives for quite a long time.
Sure.
So I think that would be cool where you can kind of add that homage to it, and people can be like, oh yeah, Plo Koon's in this one. Or, oh yeah, Ayla Secura or Barriss Offee or something like that was like a part of this. But then it's not focused on them. It's more so like, okay, they kind of add their little touch to it, but it's really the journey of this particular student. That's like, all right.
Yeah, or if they didn't really necessarily want to risk it with somebody new, what they could do is they could actually do like Kanan Jarrus.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, when Rebels picks up, he had never actually made it to full-blown, even though he kind of has that Jedi Knight mentor role, he never really made it to that.
Yeah.
He was still technically a Padawan.
And you know what? Just thinking about it, like I think this would be a great realm in order to answer like a lot of questions that you might have. So it kind of puts the Padawan, or it kind of puts the fan as a Padawan. So it's like, okay, well, the Padawan can ask a question like, okay, well, why does this happen? Or how
like
does
you can put in like all the fan stuff that people are like, well, how come, why is it that,
Yeah, because that's what Padawans usually do. And so then you have the master answer those questions. And then that's how you kind of can fill in the gaps in a real life situation. And I think that would be like, if you want to do fan service, that would be a perfect way to do it.
Yeah, you could do that. Or, they would have to, of course, be somewhat careful with that, simply because the problem that I always have is if they put too much fan service in, I don't know, it does something to the story.
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as answering, like, you don't want to answer, it just depends on which question.
No, and I agree. And actually, to your point, though, if you think about it, they've already sort of done that. Because don't forget, the whole Jedi Fallen Order game, that's a Padawan. Now, granted, he's on the run, and it was Order 66 and all that. What you're proposing obviously takes place, long before that, but... Yeah. Yeah,
more like an episode 1 through 3 era, kind of almost up to 3.
Or you could even go a little bit before that.
Yeah, true.
Maybe not necessarily High Republic era, but, maybe say 30, 40 years before
the
episode 1.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be cool.
Oh, that'd be cool. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that a Padawan series is something that would interest you, that, something that you guys would want to check out? Or... is it enough with the Jedi and the Sith? You guys want to move on to something else? Let us know in the comments section. All right, what do we got next?
All right, so Target Vader, the graphic novel, and other upcoming comics. All right, so our favorite Sith Lord, well, at least mine. I know you are a little bit partial to Palpatine, but yeah.
Well, I don't know, though. I enjoy that, because thing is, Target Vader, I think it's issue number 5 that just came out. And now we have this one, which is a brand new Darth Vader series for 2020. So he's back a lot, like in multiple stuff.
Well, I mean, going back to the Target Vader thing, I think for those who don't know, it's pretty much like this group of mercenaries pretty much that are really focused. They really don't like the Empire, and they really don't care too much for Vader. And so this group of mercenaries are pretty much like after Vader. And that's really, really, really cool, because it's like you have these high level assassins basically trying to take out this powerful Sith Lord. And, he kind of gets himself into these situations, and, he's constantly having to check and watch his back on a lot of stuff. And it's really interesting to see how you kind of combat with, it's kind of like that whole thing with Tarkin, when,
well, I was going to say, it reminds me of that. It also reminds me of I think it was a 2017 Darth Vader series where there was a bunch of mercenaries or whatever that were trying to kill him or something, and he ends up taking them out. And, they've done that storyline before, but they never did it into an entire comic series.
Yeah.
And it's like 5 issues in. It's the one, it's on my list. There's actually quite a few. There's this one. Now, this one's the new Darth Vader series for 2020. It's kind of a continuation, like a new one, new year. It basically takes place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and it picks up right after he reveals to Luke that he's his father, and Luke reacts the way he does. And now Vader is basically upset that Luke never knew about him, that he never really knew about Luke. And so now he's going to seek revenge on all the people that, didn't tell him or whatever. And apparently in this one, I think it's this issue. I have it. I just haven't read it. Where Padme seems to still be alive. It could be like something that was like a vision or something, but nobody's really sure yet. So he confronts her. It's supposed to be really, really cool.
Well, that's really interesting because I'm trying to think of like who would really be around for that, because by Empire, of course, Order 66 is gone.
Well, I mean, obviously, and not too many people knew.
Not too many people even knew that Padme was even pregnant. So the only people who might have been around were the droids.
I'm trying to remember exactly who it was, because before I bought the comic, I read about it, and it was really fascinating to me, like what they were trying to do. Because first of all, and you and I have talked about this before, they don't really cover a whole lot between Empire and Return of the Jedi. And they don't cover a whole lot between A New Hope and Empire either.
True.
Those are like two time periods that, I always thought that they should explore that more. Mm-hmm. And they don't. They usually go between like 3 and 4 or, now 7 or 6 and 7.
Right.
But you very rarely get anything, between 4 and 5 and 5 and 6. So the fact that they're even covering this time period to me is just like mind-blowing. But then to focus on Vader and to focus on, he's like really upset because, he didn't know about Luke, and now he's going to take revenge on all these people that...
So, yeah, because you would kind of...
But I wonder who it's going to be, though.
Yeah, because it would make sense that you would probably think it would be Palpatine that he would be the most angry at.
Well, and everybody... I mean, he was angry anyway, because if you remember... Now, of course, it's not canon anymore, but the Rise of Darth Vader comic... Well, not comic, actually, it was a novel, yeah. That dealt very heavily into him, learning to use his suit and, the challenges. I really wish they would make that one canon, honestly.
Yeah.
Unless they rewrite another one.
Well, I mean, I just think that, if you're going to talk about, because I guess at that time you would almost have to presume, like, well, okay, you have to presume Yoda might have known, but once again, Anakin didn't really know that Yoda knew. Mm-hmm. He knew Obi-Wan. He knew
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan. Yes, I'm your Obi-Wan driver.
Hey, things are rough after, the whole thing fell. He's got to make a living on Tatooine somehow.
Yep. So, that would actually be a great sketch. But anyway.
That'd be hilarious.
But yeah, so Obi-Wan died, of course, episode 4. Vader made sure of that. Mm-hmm. So that was the only person, to my knowledge, who would know outside of the droids, because the droids were always with,
Well, I'll tell you what Padme. I'm going to do.
So
I'm gonna read this issue. See, I wish I had read it. I was really trying to read this thing before you and I recorded, but
yeah, no, I mean, I get it. I'm just trying to think this.
No, I know. I had the same questions too, and it's just like, and what was funny was, I wish I can remember the description, because they actually went over like some of the people, and I'm like, oh yeah. So that would have been interesting.
Yeah, that just makes it more. And I gotta read it too. Because
another one that you're gonna want to check out is the Rise of Kylo Ren.
Yeah,
that's a monster of a comic book.
Yeah,
I mean, that goes into so much. Like,
I've heard a lot of reviews on that. It was awesome.
Well, I don't know. Did you see my episode last week of our own show?
Yes,
I was gonna say, because it'd be kind of tough to get these guys to,
yes, I did.
We're not even doing it. Well, so as you know, I reviewed the first 2 issues. Mm-hmm. I think the second one's coming out in a week or two or something, or the third one rather. It's coming out in a week or two or something like that. But it's really getting good. Okay. I mean, I highly recommend that one. And then, of course, you're bringing up Target Vader, which is one, honestly, I forgot that it was out.
Yeah, and they kind of basically combine that into like one big graphic novel, with all the different episodes. So
yeah, so that's going to actually be really cool. Then there was what's that weird one? I keep forgetting, like Dark Visions or something, the one where Vader's like on a horse. And,
yeah, the dark, yeah.
I think it's called Dark Visions or something. And that was the one where like that Vader had that groupie and he ends up killing her. And I mean, it was just like, it was a really dark, weird comic series. That was a bizarre comic series. I would recommend it, but just understand that it's strange. Did you read any of it?
No, not yet.
Oh, yeah, you got to check it out. Yeah. You got to check it out so we have something to talk about.
Definitely. And
then, of course, I believe Star Wars, how it's an ongoing comic or whatever, they're starting a new story arc with that, too. So that's definitely worth checking out.
No, they've been hitting the comics.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty hard.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many good comics that are coming out now that I have to check it out. Oh, that's right. So you were totally sick last week.
Yeah, still getting over it.
Yeah, how's that going?
I need a Vader suit. Well, for Halloween purposes and just for medicinal purposes, but no, I'm getting better. It's just weather change and just
kind of a long road back, huh?
Yeah, just acute bronchitis, but Well, I mean, the cool thing about that, so how much longer you got the breathing treatments? Probably maybe like 4 or 5 days, just kind of to keep everything kind of clear. Mm-hmm. But, it's just, fortunately, it's an acute version. It's not full-on bronchitis, so that's why it didn't knock me out too bad. So I was able to actually still go to work and do some things.
That's cool.
But,
yeah, I was wondering about that too. Like, oh man, because I know how that can.
Well, yeah, coupled with
that
asthma,
wipe you out, man. Yeah, because with the asthma that you got and stuff, it's like, dude.
Yeah, that's the thing that kind of shakes you up a bit, but. I kind of know what it feels like to be force choked. Let's just say that.
Well, here's the thing, though. So, while you're recuperating, you got all these great comics.
Exactly.
So, let us know what you guys think. Are you into this Target Vader that, Darryl was bringing up? And, of course, then I got this one, the brand new Darth Vader series that takes place after Empire Strikes Back. You guys into that? Let us know in the comments section if you guys are enjoying the comics and what comics you're reading. All right, what do we got next?
All right, so the Skywalker Saga finally moves to 4K UHD.
Finally.
All right, so...
Now, here's the thing that I'm wondering, though.
Okay.
So, first of all, it's a Best Buy exclusive. I don't know if it's going to stay that way or what. Mm-hmm. But it sells for around $250, which isn't bad. Mm-hmm. It comes out to like maybe $20 a movie or something. Somewhere around there. Maybe
and this covers like the entire... So basically,
only episodes 1 through 9. You're not getting Rogue One. You're not getting Solo.
Okay.
But that's why I think they're, making a point to call it the Skywalker Saga. So it's only the Saga episodes.
All right. Just make sure clarity.
But here's the thing, though. See, as you know, we've already had The Last Jedi on 4K, and of course, Rise of Skywalker's coming out. I don't think they ever released a 4K version of Force Awakens. But a lot of people were complaining about the transfer of The Last Jedi.
Okay.
Like, the process wasn't all that great. Like, I've been watching a lot of these. I subscribe to this one guy who basically does, like, all these, like, home theater type reviews. And he talks about, the 4K Blu-rays a lot, and which ones are good, which ones aren't. And, yeah, surprisingly enough, I guess the transfer, the way that Disney was doing it, it wasn't all that great. So he's saying that hopefully, they're going to change all that with this.
Okay.
So it'll be really interesting to see what the transfer is like. And because, the 4K versions that you can get on Disney Plus aren't overly great either, but that's 4K streaming. And 4K streaming is way different from an actual medium. It's like it's a different process that they use and everything. Yeah,
I was just about to ask you the question. So do you think, like, because with everybody moving towards a streaming system and if you're already paying for Disney Plus, do you think this is really going to sell? Because
yes, and I'll tell you why. Because of one thing, besides all the arguments that you can make on why the physical medium's better anyway, I mean, sometimes that falls on deaf ears because people want convenience. I mean, it's much easier to just, and like you said, you're already paying for it.
Right.
Well, if I can watch it, it's good enough.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good enough. But the thing is, it's the audio. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are sinking money into like 7.1, so like DTS, Atmos enabled, home theater systems. You're not getting that on the streaming services.
Do you think the people, so unless you're really truly like into that, I guess that aspect of home entertainment, because like a lot of people, you have a lot of good sound bars out there. They're just, like I said, my grandfather has a sound bar.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty great, and
so they got the same model that I do. It just doesn't have the Atmos feature. Mm-hmm. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what I mean. Even with that, like, do you think you're going to, because $250, that's, I mean, a lot of money
to put out for one thing.
For one thing, as opposed to...
I'm also assuming if they're doing this, I can't help but think. Now, I haven't read anything about this, mind you, but I can't help but think they're going to release them individually as well.
Now, the thing that would I guess would kind of sell it, no pun intended, is if there's coming with like a bunch of bonus features and stuff like
I'm
that.
sure
like,
it is.
So,
I haven't read too much about it yet because I only found out about it like days ago.
Right, because when we got the original Blu-rays, and they had that disc that was full of stuff, and so it was worth it just for that.
Sure, absolutely.
You know what I mean? On top of the fact that it was, on top of this being in Blu-ray, so it was clear and it's like sweet. But
here's the thing that's interesting though. So this guy, he's really technical about the disc reviews. There's a lot of times where the Blu-ray version actually looks better than the 4K version, and it's only because of the way they transferred it.
I could believe that.
So I mean, the question comes: is the Blu-ray version like good enough if you already have it? Like, what would be the reason to even upgrade to the next one?
Right, and that's what I was about to say, because if you already have, like, for us, we already own the Blu-ray version, so
well, of course we're Star Wars fans. We'll buy,
yeah, we'll buy the stupid thing like a million times,
sure,
but
you're right though. For the average fan,
right, I
would say the audio, bonus features, if the transfer's really good, because here's the thing that you got to look at with streaming too, and this is one of the reasons why Legacy. Oh, by the way, Top Gun's coming to 4K in June.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. That's going to be cool. There's actually a bunch of cool things, but
hopefully that transfer is good.
Oh, yeah. Because if it's anything like the IMAX that we all saw, even Ron back there switching. Oh, yeah. We love that. That whole IMAX thing.
Yeah, that was sweet.
The minute the whole thing like hits you and you're just like,
you hear that audio.
And you're like, oh, yeah, this is going to be a good experience. But the whole reason, though, that people still buy a lot of these physical, discs or whatever is because, the streaming thing is all about licensing. So a lot of times your Netflix, your Primes, they'll lose the license for it. Now, it's true with Disney Plus, you're not going to have that problem, but let's face it, there's a lot of people that don't want to pay like $7 a month, for a service. Like, they're going to be the ones that, they subscribe to it long enough to watch Mandalorian, and then they quit.
Yeah. And they wait till the next season.
Then wait till the next season and do it again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to be able to just have it, plus it also depends on your internet connection. If your internet connection's kind of crappy because, like, everybody in the house is on their phone, you might be getting, like, a little bit above VHS quality when you're streaming it, and unless you're subscribing to, like, really fast internet speeds. So these are the things that you have to watch. Whereas when you get, a disc, it's the same quality. It's, you get all these other features. I think that it's is worth
cleaner,
switching.
Though.
Yeah.
It's just you're going to get you can almost guarantee that it's going to be cleaner
than a stream.
Than a stream. And that's essentially
the question comes, though, which you proposed, is like, is it going to be better, though, than the Blu-ray?
Yeah.
Like, if you already own the Blu-ray, is the difference enough to warrant spending money?
Yeah.
Now, I personally love my 4K Last Jedi.
Okay.
I think it looks and sounds like really noticeably better. Now, granted, I never saw it in Blu-ray. So, I mean, if I looked at the Blu-ray version, I might be like, well, all right, that's cool. But, I mean, it's one of those things that if you don't already own it, then yes, it's a no-brainer. Get this box set. Plus, the Rise of Skywalker will be in it. You know, that'll be cool.
Well, at least, and then on top of that, you kind of have like a complete set that has, and it's all the same. So you don't have like, okay, I got the Blu-ray version of this, but I got the 4K version of that, and I got the UHD version. Everything is kind of like, all right, everything is.
Or some of them are streamed because, like, for instance, with Solo and The Force Awakens, I have those on Prime. I don't even own the discs of those. I have Rogue One, but I don't have those two. But I have The Last Jedi. So it's kind of like, it does unify your collection. Now, of course, it also depends on packaging. Because, sometimes the packaging is so bad it actually scratches up discs, and I can't think that that's going to be the case here, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the packaging looks nice and fairly elegant.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it's going to be cool.
Right.
But I guess, like I said, I think it just depends on, what you really want to spend your money on and what's more so conducive for.
Well, sure, because I haven't even bought, you know how much I love Star Trek The Next Generation. Well, okay, they released those on Blu-ray and they updated a lot of the graphics and I still don't own them. Not because I don't want them, but because, to spend like a couple $100.
Yeah.
It's like,
that can go towards a car repair. That can go towards
sure, and I can already
a trip
stream
that you
them on
want to take.
Netflix. And it's like the Netflix, whenever I'm jonesing to watch The Next Generation, I could just do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now I do own the original series on Blu-ray, but that was because this was before they actually put those versions on streaming. And, there's only 3 seasons, so it's not that tough. Next Generation's got like 7.
Right.
But I guess that's a discussion for Head to Head, a Star Trek podcast. This is Star Wars, so we're going to put it up for vote for you guys. What do you guys think? Is the streaming version good enough for you guys? Or, do you guys own the Blu-ray? Do you think that this big box set is worth getting? Let us know in the comments section. And also comment on whether or not you guys own some of the 4K versions of the Star Wars movies that have been released and what you guys think of those. All right, well, we got a 4th segment in the Cantina, don't we? Yeah,
that was the 4th one.
Was it?
Yeah. We moved quick.
Ooh, time warp. All right, well then.
Wormhole. But anyway.
Yeah, well then.
I guess it's time to leave the Cantina.
I guess it is. I guess I've had too much to drink. Really time to leave.
All right. So next we have Duel of the Fates. All right. So this week, the question is, which prequel movie told the best story? Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones?
Ooh.
Told the best story.
Yeah, it's not like which one I like better. It's the best story. All right, well, it's got to be Phantom Menace.
Okay, why?
Because with the Phantom Menace, like Attack of the Clones, and again, this I'm not talking about, because we all know that Attack of the Clones is probably my least favorite of all the Star Wars films.
Okay.
That notwithstanding, though, because I think Phantom Menace would probably be my second least favorite. Maybe. I don't know. I'd have to think about it again. But with the Phantom Menace, you had somewhat of a complex political story going on. You had the politics. Now, granted, again, because your question is not execution, we're talking story.
Yep.
So for all you guys out there that are ready to, crucify us, about how they handle the politics all wrong, it's boring, whatever, take it easy. Slow down. We're talking story. So when you deal with the story, you got this Trade Federation thing going. You have like the Jedi. You could tell that there's a little bit going on between, the Senate versus the Jedi, and how there's a little bit of a thing. You have Palpatine's rise to power. How is he going to go from just being the senator to
Chancellor?
Chancellor. I almost said emperor. But I mean, he was well on that path. And I just think that there's a lot of, and then of course the Sith come back and the Jedi weren't ready for it. So you have all that going on. And there was just a lot of really cool story arcs they had going on within that movie. Now, granted, you might not think that they handled it very well. And I would agree with that. I mean, we all know the execution was less than stellar on the prequels in general, but particularly with the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones, I thought, had a really cool story, and I thought the Count Dooku character is one of my favorite Sith Lords of all time, actually. But, I don't know. It just felt a little too simplistic. I mean, when you compare it to the complexity of the Phantom Menace, or at least what could have been from the Phantom Menace, because again, we're talking about story.
Okay.
But, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that the story of Attack of the Clones is okay, too. It just, if you're talking about which one's better, I got to go with Phantom Menace.
I would completely agree with you.
Another boring Duel of the Fates.
I know.
This is almost as bad as my single Duel of the Fates from last week, where I had to debate myself.
I'm going to leave that joke alone. Anyways.
Yep. I almost gave another mic to the voices in my head, but I decided against it.
But, I think Phantom Menace was definitely the superior as far as storytelling, simply because you had, like you said, it was definitely complex. You had multiple things going on that all kind of revolved around the same thing. So you kind of have the whole, and you got a lot of different lessons, backstories, things of that nature. So, for example, you had the maturation of ObiWan Kenobi as he's growing with Qui-Gon Jinn, but then you have the implementation of now Anakin Skywalker coming into the mix. You see the development of Padme, being a queen, and then now she's becoming into the whole political realm. And then, of course, now you have the peril of the Jedi. We're always used to seeing them being strong, and but now you're kind of seeing like, hey,
yeah, there's some chinks in that armor.
Yeah, some chinks in that armor, and now they're kind of like, hey, all right, what's going on? We can't see like we used to. What's up? But it was also the final time the first time you got to see the Jedi Council. Mm-hmm. It's like you kind of got exposed to a wider view of how everything happened. And I think that was more so like the draw as far as Phantom Menace, is that you got that. And then, of course, how like everything happened, you kind of could see Palpatine, playing that dual side where, he's this doting, senator, and then next thing you know, he's got the hoodie on and he's just like, I'm sending my apprentice Darth Maul.
Yeah, and you just see how he's engineering this whole thing. Yeah, and he's kind of controlling both sides of the equation.
It's literally watching a live chess match, which I thought was really, really awesome. I thought that was what made even the title, The Phantom Menace, because the Jedi didn't know where it was coming from.
Exactly.
They were blind to it, and so you're thinking like, oh, Darth Maul is this big Sith Lord, but really it's Palpatine or the Emperor, but they didn't know it yet. So I love that. I love that aspect. And then of course we still have to see, you're Anakin Skywalker. You're going to grow to be Darth Vader. You don't know it yet. So now you're trying to see, when did those seeds start to happen? How does he change over time? You start to see like, all right, well, hey, he has these abilities. We noticed this early. Obi-Wan and Yoda are against it, but Qui-Gon is like, no, he's got it.
And Mace Mace was against everybody.
It. Yeah.
And then of course, you got Qui-Gon, and this is where we also, for the first time, see somewhat of a rebellious Jedi.
Yeah.
Because he's basically like, well, screw the rules. I'm going to do what I know is right or whatever. And it was like Obi-Wan. Now, of course, the book that you brought up earlier, Master and Apprentice,
right,
really shows Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's relationship before that, and how, they're two totally different people, and that enriches the Phantom Menace quite a bit. But yeah, you still see that Obi-Wan's more by the book. Qui-Gon is a little more about doing what's right versus following rules. Mm-hmm. And we had never seen that in a Jedi before. And it was really interesting.
And we get introduced to like all our beloved characters, like R2, like where did he even come from? 3PO, what did he, what I'm saying? So it was just how they were kind of brought into it made perfect sense and everything. I mean, it was just, like I said, outside of the execution of the movie, Phantom Menace could have honestly been like a all-time great movie. It could have been right up there with Empire, in my opinion. Sure. It was funny because one of my students asked me the other day, actually yesterday, it was weird. It's out of nowhere. He was like, "Hey, Mr. Sanders, what do you think was better? Like Empire Strikes Back," and he couldn't even get. I was like, Empire. Like he couldn't even finish the rest of the sentence. And I didn't even look at it.
You could have been comparing it to Casablanca. It's like Empire.
Yep, Empire.
Empire Strikes Back. Yep.
So but I just really think that Phantom Menace really could have, if it actually had the look of the original trilogy, honestly, and maybe
we're going to get dialogue, so many comments on this.
The dialogue beefed up. If the dialogue was beefed up like if Irvin Kershner would have done that with Phantom Menace or something like that, and then you had just the practical look of Empire, I really believe Phantom Menace probably could have rivaled Empire just because of the nature of the beast. It's just like everything that it encompassed, everything that it had. It was a great story.
I could see that. And so Now that we've actually said that the Phantom Menace could have ranked right up there with Empire Strikes Back, as you guys are commenting and, ready to tear us down for that, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell when we say all these other crazy theories that you guys want to comment on. And, hey, don't forget to share this video with all your friends so they could tear us down for saying that. But, I mean, absolutely.
I'm going to be like the new Gail King.
But story-wise, I can't help but agree, though.
Yeah.
Again, people are going to hang on to the whole, they're looking at the Phantom Menace and how it was handled. And there's a lot of issues with the way it was handled. Nobody is arguing that. But
True.
Story-wise, I agree. It probably could have been up there with any of the original trilogy movies, including Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, it was just a great story.
It was a really good story. All right.
Yep.
Well, now that we've pretty much guaranteed a ton of comments. If anybody sees this, I know they're going to comment on it. We'll see. All right, what do we got next?
All right, next we have From a Certain Point of View. All right, so Certain Point of View, this is our feature stories, our feature topic, where we kind of delve in deep into a particular topic, and one that I've aptly named for this show, I Think We're in Trouble, as uttered by Han Solo. This week, problems with the Obi-Wan series.
Yep, it's all this guy.
So
I realized I was pointing more towards you. It's
yes, our Obi-Wan driver.
Yes, Uber One.
So there's been there was a couple of things that was kind of going out in the news. One, it was basically saying that this series got canceled, and Kathleen Kennedy had to come out and say, no, it hasn't been canceled. It's just been delayed. So now, of course, that sent shockwaves, kind of ripples in the force, if you will, to the Star Wars community. Because everybody's kind of wondering, okay, what now? And once again, it just seems as though they can't get it right.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is, though, for every time you get something like this, you get The Mandalorian, or you get something that actually goes smooth, right? But, the whole thing behind this was they fired the writers or whatever. And it's like, okay, why?
Yeah.
What was it that they were doing that you didn't like? The series has been in development for a long time. It's like, why now? Why are you waiting? It's almost like a Lord and Miller thing. Why wait till 80%, is done and then get rid of them?
Yeah, I just think that, after, the response for the Rise of Skywalker, which in a lot of cases has been mixed, some people really, really loved it.
And
then other people.
Really funny about that is the fact that it's mixed, but it's not. Like, even the people that didn't like it like things about it.
Yeah, it wasn't as visceral as, The Last Jedi.
No, nowhere near as fan dividing or anything like that. I mean, if anything, if there is any venom left, it's from The Last Jedi, and people that didn't like this one either are like, oh, they really ruined it or whatever. And it's like, but still, there's an overwhelming majority of people that really did like it. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
So, my thing is, and I guess because, Deborah Chow was the director for Kenobi, for the Kenobi series. And they've even, from what I've heard recently, is that they've cut down the episodes. So now instead of getting a full 10 episodes, I heard we're now only going to get 8. So it's kind of like, okay, why? And I feel like, we keep having these same issues over at Lucasfilm / Disney as with the Star Wars property, and it's kind of like, okay, why can't we ever get this right? And now we're even hearing, of course, probably within the last month or so, we've kind of started getting information about Colin Trevorrow's version of Rise of Skywalker, which seemed to have been really awesome.
Which, oddly enough, was titled Duel of the Fates.
Exactly. And, it's like, okay, well, for those people who didn't like JJ's version, they seem to have liked the way that Colin Trevorrow, where he was going with it and how awesome that would have been. So it's like, all right, are we throwing away a diamond, or are we, what I'm saying? And you're constantly going to have that.
Wait a second, though, before we go into that.
All right.
I would caution anybody, including myself, because I was sort of guilty of this. It's like, Yeah, we all read the Duel of the Fates, like the Colin Trevorrow version, episode 9, and go, oh man, this would have been incredible. We don't know that.
True.
Because something could be incredible on paper, but then the execution of it might be terrible.
Phantom Menace.
Yeah, right. I think we actually just...
Duel of the Fates, see? Once again.
Right. I mean, for all we know, Duel of the Fates could have been every bit as good as Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, exactly.
But that's true. If it had been executed correctly. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but wonder, with some of these projects that maybe don't go well. And certainly the Colin Trevorrow episode 9 is one of them because, I don't know, there was some sort of creative differences. I don't know if it was more on Trevorrow's end or Lucasfilm's end, but it's like somewhere the relationship broke down. And it's like, okay, what is it that, what was the problem with that now? Because it's kind of like you said, for everything that I read on the Duel of the Fates thing, I'm like, okay, this sounds good. I mean, it continued the story of The Last Jedi, but there was a lot of original stuff in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's kind of like where you kind of get the divide, with the fans is because like you got some people who want the nostalgia of, but then you got other people like, no, we've seen that already. We want something new, fresh. And I think that, the best thing, of course, is balancing the force, if you will, is to kind of have that happy medium of give them that until you can transition to something completely original where you can take Star Wars in a completely different realm. That's the way I personally would do it. But I think the issue is that, it's the leadership, whatever's going on over there. It just seems like they start off these great projects or things that we want to see. And then like now you, as a Star Wars fan, it's like whenever we heard something about Star Wars, we couldn't wait. We're like, okay, oh my God, this is coming out. Yeah, can't wait for this. Now we're like kind of hesitant now because it's like, now we're going this like, well, I hope this is good.
Right.
Where before we never really had that issue.
No, I mean, we would never say that. Now it's like something new Star Wars comes out. You're like, man, I hope this doesn't suck.
Exactly.
I hope this doesn't like further sully the Star Wars name. But here's the thing, and this is what I think the problem is. The problem is that while Kathleen Kennedy is one of the best producers Hollywood has ever produced, she's not a good studio head.
Right.
Now, for all I know, she might be a good studio head. She's just not acting very good. And it's one of those things that I think that she's one of those, how like when we were always like in the whole education system together, a teacher that was amazing would become an administrator and they were a terrible administrator.
Yep.
It's like, okay, just because you're a good teacher doesn't mean you could be a good administrator.
True.
They're two different skill sets.
Absolutely.
So I think that this is what we have here. I think that what we've done was we plucked one of the most brilliant producers in Hollywood and put them in a role that they're just not very good at. Now, on one hand, there's, Disney could say, well, I've got billions of reasons to say why she is good because even Kevin Feige himself cannot, keep up with this track record. Like pretty much every film that they put out under her leadership has averaged over $1 billion in revenue. Do
you think that's because of her, or do you think that's really because of the name Star Wars?
No, I think that's because of her. Because
I'll put it this way. You think it's mostly her? Like, is she really like, man, like she's just really driving it home? Or is it more so like people just love Star Wars that much? And because it's such a iconic franchise that people are just going to go see it because...
Well, I mean, I think there is a certain amount of that because even all the people that are whining... First of all, the people that are whining are generally the hardcore fans. Mm-hmm. But... The other thing is, it's true. Star Wars is such a big thing that it could weather even when things are like, it's taken a lot of hits, it could still make a pile of cash. It could still be profitable because it is Star Wars. It's like, but the question is how much longer, how many more hits could it sustain?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would love for it to just kind of... Because how we're always talking about, like, all right, everybody, say, okay, well, J.J. Abrams, I want to go talk to George. Benioff and Weiss, oh, yeah, we met with George Lucas about that, or we invited him to the set. Honestly, I really do feel like, and we've always said this, George Lucas is phenomenal at telling stories. From Star Wars to Indiana Jones to Red Tails, the list goes on. But as a director, he's not the greatest. As a script writer or, writing the dialogue, he's not the best. However, I think that if we could just
get him to
write the stories and then just let somebody just
hate to go back to it, but Empire Strikes Back, right?
Yeah.
He got the story going. He kind of oversaw things, but Irvin Kershner was the one, along with the actors and everything, that put their spin on it, and that's why you got this great movie.
Exactly. And once again, it's like you have to look at the formula. And I think that's where you really started to see, like, okay, this is like if you had, and I'm just create a perfect world, so to speak, but if you had something like, all right, George writes the story, Feige does the producing, and then you have Spielberg direct, I think you will automatically have a hit.
I would hope so.
You know what I'm saying? Just because you would just think.
There's this thing, I don't know if you've seen this or not. It's on YouTube. It's called How Star Wars Was Saved in the Edit. Have you ever seen it?
No.
So basically, it was the first cut of A New Hope was awful. Lucas edited it. It was terrible.
Wow.
So then he brings in, I think it was his wife, actually, that did most of the editing.
Oh, wow.
So she comes in and re-edits the thing, and that's what we have today, and that's what happened. I mean, it was literally like same scene, same movie, everything, but the editing was done a little bit differently. And I mean, obviously, that's an oversimplification of this amazing documentary. If you guys haven't checked it out, you should definitely check it out, because it's really eye-opening, and it just goes to show you that as much as Lucas does get a lot of credit that he does deserve, it's really not just him.
No, yeah.
Everybody from Ralph McQuarrie, who did a lot of the designs and artwork and stuff like that, upon which stuff is based, and
Rick McCullum and everything.
Sure,
yeah.
Well, he was a producer, but I'm not really a fan. In fact, I would say that the prequels were somewhat of a disaster because that guy just. I'm not even going to start on him. I have very negative feelings toward him.
I just thought I would toss that ball over the plate to see what you do with it.
So mean.
I know.
But I mean, that's the thing, though, is like it's a team of people. And the problem is that I think in Kennedy's case, she's almost trying to oversee too much, too. Like, she's not just letting people do what they need to do. Let them do what they're good at. Yeah, like she's micromanaging too much. And she's doing it because, George obviously handpicked her. She wants to, it's kind of like one of those things where you're entrusted with this thing that meant so much to this guy, you don't want to fail. But once again, I say this on every podcast that we do, if they would just have a plan.
Yeah.
If they would just plan things.
Yeah.
Which they seem to be trying to do a little bit more now, but then you get this whole thing where it's kind of like, oh, we're going to fire all the writers on Obi-Wan. It's like, why?
Yeah.
And now who are you going to replace them with?
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of like, you got to wonder, like, what's the prerequisite to be on the writing team? Like, do you have to be a Star Wars fan, or is it like, okay, we need a couple of Star Wars fans, a couple of people who aren't, just so you can get a nice blend? Like,
it's like, geez, just get the guys from The Mandalorian to do it.
I know, right?
I mean, I know Favreau wrote a lot of episodes or whatever, but I mean, they had a couple. We'll get them.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, you can't have them writing every Star Wars thing, but it's like, the problem is, and I've said this before, Star Wars is not like every other movie or TV show or whatever. You have to get a certain type of director, a certain type of writer.
Now, when we talk about writers, let me ask you this question. So there are a lot of books that we've often, we always talk about Claudia,
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, would you rather like, okay, hey, let's get this person to kind of write the story?
Yeah, let's get Claudia Gray to just write the entire Obi-Wan series.
Yeah, and then...
It's only 8 episodes.
And then you just, have someone just kind of punch up the dialogue.
Yeah,
to write it, or put it in script form so that way...
Yeah, kind of develop it for TV or whatever.
Exactly. And then, there you go.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of things they could do.
Or Zahn, because he's got a,
Any of the authors.
Yeah.
Any of the good authors that have been doing it, they could do something like that. They could get, they could get some other I don't really want to say like any science fiction writer, but there's a lot of writers that they know that can write this kind of thing. I mean, it's, again, I don't really know, without knowing too much.
Yeah.
It's tough to see why did they fire these people in the first place. I think you almost have to know that before you could start recommending. The other thing too was last week I talked a little bit about that whole George Lucas live action series. Mm-hmm. They had finally leaked some footage of that.
Right.
So there you go. I mean, get Lucas once again to just write even the basic outlines of all this stuff. And then you get people to write the dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, I just really think, and that's why I feel like, the Star Wars franchise is kind of in trouble just because it's just going through.
It is. It's taking some hits, and it's the thing that saves it.
Unnecessarily hits, too,
right.
Sometimes. I feel like it's like a quarterback that's like running with the ball unnecessarily, and it's like you're taking hits when you could just stand up or throw the ball away. Just, hey, we're not gonna do it right now until we get a good play, then we'll go down the field with it. Or let's just take those small steps, like, hey, let's put out some good series here, let's find the good pieces here, take those 5-10 yards out, then you go for the long ball. But it's a lot of times they're just trying to shoot stuff out there, or you're just running around with stuff, and you're just taking hits unnecessarily, and now people are getting like concerned, like, okay, can this franchise still hold it together? Hear me, baby, hold together.
Well, we'll have to see. But what about you guys? What do you think? Do you think that Star Wars is really in trouble, or do you think that maybe they're just having to find their ground, and then, which is actually kind of where I'm at. I think that they just have to get past. Well, we'll see. Because Kathleen Kennedy may be on her way out.
Yeah, that
does seem to be the rumor. So do you guys think that maybe she needs to go now? What is it? What are you guys' thoughts on this whole Obi-Wan series? Why do you think that the writers were fired? And if any of you guys have heard anything that maybe we haven't heard or we didn't cover, certainly leave it in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Uh-oh. I think it's time for my favorite.
Yes, it is.
It really is this time, right? I didn't lose count.
Yeah, it is time.
All right. Well, it's time for my favorite segment of this show where we answer your questions, and it's called Clear Your Mind. That's right. You guys send in questions. We answer those questions. What do we got first?
All right. The first question has been submitted by Vargas Calhoun, and his question is this. I'm starting to think that there isn't some special Jedi trick that allows you to become a Force ghost. Anakin or Kylo probably weren't around long enough to learn that. I think you just have to be strong in the Force and on the light side. What do you think?
Okay. Next question. Again, there's sort of like you have the in-universe explanation, and then you have the reality. Mm-hmm. And sometimes one affects the other. The reality is, George Lucas was never really trying to come up with some great explanation. It's a fantasy. It's not sci-fi. There's some things you're just supposed to take at face value and just, okay, this is what's going on. Mm-hmm. You don't see Lord of the Rings fans like questioning every little thing like that. But this is a testament to what makes Star Wars so magical, is that we want to know more. And quite honestly, the whole idea is Qui-Gon is the one that discovered this technique, and he passed it on. And everybody could kind of hang with that except for the whole Anakin thing. Mm-hmm. Now, you could just dust it off and say that maybe he found a holocron somewhere. Well, don't forget he did raid the Jedi library.
Well, here's the thing, and I think it wouldn't be so, and I kind of agree with him just simply because we didn't find, it was George Lucas who explained it in his own movie that, he's the one in episode 3 was like, oh yeah, more. So it's like George trapped himself. Like, had he just left it alone, we would have been fine because we already accepted the fact that it's like, all right. But when you tell now, it's like, okay. You do have
a good point, because we already figured that when Jedi die, they just turn into Force ghosts.
Yeah. And if you would have left it alone, we'd have been fine. But then you give us an explanation. Well, then that contradicts, then like, okay, well, when you find out about this particular technique, Yoda tells Obi-Wan that, okay, more training I have for you. Well, if Obi-Wan's just finding out about it and he's the master, Anakin was already presumed dead at that point. So it's just like, so we know he didn't know. So, and even to your point, because we brought this up on another podcast, that when Vader struck Obi-Wan down, you know, he told, well, before he did, he said, if you strike me down, I become more powerful than you could possibly imagine. Of course, Vader probably has no idea what he's talking about. He probably thought Obi-Wan's senile. So then he strikes him down, or he thought Obi-Wan just disappeared. And so Vader's stepping on the cloak like, okay, what the heck happened? Now, you could make the argument like you said, did he go to Palpatine like, hey, I didn't even touch him yet.
Funniest thing happened to me when I was dueling Obi-Wan.
Yeah, funniest thing happened to me at work today. You know.
Kind of like, have you seen that before or know what that's all about?
And maybe Vader was curious and was like, maybe that's why he went and raided the temples and maybe found that particular trick.
That's what I would think, yeah.
You can surmise that, and that would, if that happened, then maybe that'll
Well, you also have to look at it from the fact that Palpatine was obsessed with the whole like death, resurrection, that kind of thing. So if any Sith Lord was going to find the secret to that, he would be the guy. Now maybe he uses a different technique than what the Jedi use.
True.
He could have passed that on to Vader.
But, and then like Kylo, once again, I don't think he became a full Jedi Knight. So
no, but there is a lot of, again, they imply it in the movies a little bit, but there is like a lot of like comic and, you know, novel and all that stuff about where he was pretty much like looking for a bunch of holocrons and, you know, and he was like studying that stuff. He's another guy that you could say, look, if anybody's going to know, he's going to be the guy.
So, I mean, and I kind of get the whole thing. It's like, all right, well, you know, if you're just strong in the Force, or because you really think about it, the only ones we've ever seen were people who we knew were really strong in the Force. Obi-Wan, Yoda, Luke, you know, Leia, Anakin, of course. So that makes sense in that regard.
Yeah, the other thing is you can almost give Anakin a pass because he was conceived by the Force. So it's kind of like, you know, maybe it's like I don't really have to try kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like
happens.
But I mean, you know, if he stayed evil, you know, like you kind of have to wonder, like, okay, well, you don't get to come back, you know. So
unless you Palpatine it.
Well, yeah, which we still awaiting the answers for that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's coming up.
Of course.
Just remember, the dark side leaves to pass. Some consider to be unnatural. Leave it at that.
Yeah, George, leave it at that. No, but yeah, I see his point though.
Oh, I definitely understand. And I agree. I mean, it's one of those things that there's a couple of things that you just accept because it is a fantasy. But the problem with Star Wars, too, is they've gotten to the point where they've explained so much. Now you have to explain all of it.
Right.
That's the problem that I have. It's like once you could let it go and say it's a fantasy, but the problem is, you know, they're giving us diagrams on how ships work. It's almost like they're sort of a fantasy masquerading as a sci-fi in a sense, because they're definitely doing a lot of sci-fi like stuff.
See, once you start down that dark path, forever will dominate your destiny.
Exactly, and that's the problem. The problem is it's like, you know, now we need to know everything.
Yeah. And
the problem too, even like, you know, I say a lot where we host this show, it's like there's so much information out there now. It's so hard to keep up with it all. And I mean, you know, my hat's off to all these guys that had these Star Wars shows that know just like every little thing, and you're just like, man, you know, they're going over like all the Sith Lords and all that. I'm just like, dude, I remember when I used to be able to do that. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And fortunately, our show is it's less factual, more discussion, philosophical, that kind of thing. So we could get away with it. But a lot of these like straight on, you know, here's a character analysis or whatever, you know, or like the news stuff.
Right.
You know, yeah, it's a commitment. And unfortunately, I think that it's Lucas himself and others that have actually started us on that path where it's like, I wonder how, you know, how does a lightsaber work? Well, then they start to give us all this information and we keep wanting more and more and more. And then, you know, and they are getting pretty liberal with this whole force ghosts and, you know, use of the Force and all that it begs some explanation.
It does.
So I agree.
Yep.
All right. Well, hopefully that answers his question. What do we got next?
All right, so the next question we have comes from Bernard Lloyd. Bernard Lloyd asks the question, will we be able to settle once and for all which side is stronger, the light or the dark?
Well, I mean, honestly, now this Lucas did address. Now, of course, Disney can do whatever they want, but they seem to be going along with this. The light side is stronger, the dark side is quicker. So you can get stronger in the dark side faster than you can get stronger in the light. But if you have the patience and you do the work, the light side guy is going to be stronger than the dark side guy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've always wondered that too, because you do see some pretty powerful guys, like, you know, when you can put up like Yoda versus the Emperor, which that was a battle we all wanted to see just once.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, you kind of always wonder, like, well, dang, who would win? And, you know, you kind of wonder, like, okay, Yoda lost that battle, not because he wasn't strong enough. I think he was just in a situation where it was too much for him to deal with, because trying to compete with Palpatine, then you got all these stormtroopers coming up. It's like you can't fight multiple fronts like that. If he would have just stayed engaged with Palpatine only, could Yoda have actually
and in a flatter surface, like maybe if it had stayed in that one room, or if it had been more like the Mace, you know, Palpatine battle or something. I think because I mean, there was a lot of times where Yoda clearly was dominating him, and you know, Palpatine was throwing his strongest lightning at him, and, you know, Yoda deflected it, and you could see that Palpatine was visibly shaken, like, uh-oh.
Yeah. He was frustrated, definitely.
Yeah. You know, so, I mean, it's a situational thing, not to mention the fact that even for his species, he was pretty old. You know, that'd be like, you know, some, like, 30-year-old, you know, martial arts master going against some 90-year-old. It's like, okay, well, when that guy was, like, maybe 50... it would have been a different story, but you know, you slow down a little with age, no matter how good you are.
True.
You know, and that's the big issue, and I think that's the problem that you also have to look at as well. Not just the age of each of the combatants, but you also have to look at, you know, like with the dark side, you're gonna take some unfair advantages. You're gonna, you know, it's whatever it takes to win, and the light side users don't have that attitude. Yeah. So it depends on the situation.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I often wonder, like, even with Mace, like, granted, he was tapping into a bit to the dark.
Yeah, he's kind of a different thing. Because, like you said, he was tapping into the dark side a little bit.
But I guess you kind of have to wonder, like, I guess it almost depends on, like, you know, who you're facing. Yeah. Because it's like, if you're like, let's say you're a strong dark side person, but you're going against, like, I mean, like we saw, like, you know, Dooku versus Anakin, you know, episode 2. Okay, strong, you know, dark side user and Dooku, Anakin being conceived of the Force, you would think presumably he would still have the upper hand. And he's on the light side, but he still lost just because he hadn't had as much experience or training. But then you saw the difference in 3 when it's like, okay, you know, I'm not that same kid anymore. You know, I've grown a bit.
It's the same Obi-Wan, though. My man Obi-Wan was out of that fight in like 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, man. It's like, I don't know what's going on with Obi-Wan. But
I don't know. He just,
So that's a good point, though. It's just like, and he's the master. That's the thing. But
here's the thing, and it's not making excuses. It's just, you got to remember, though, that Dooku was Obi-Wan's master's master. So a lot of the same things that Obi-Wan would throw at him, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I remember when I taught, you know, Qui-Gon this, and that's kind of a cute little, you know, way of doing it. But
to that point, though, it's like, well, then he really should have beat Anakin, because he's beaten like the 3rd generation of what I taught, if you really think about it.
Yeah. The only thing is, though, that Anakin, you know, remember, he was wildly unpredictable. And I think that was the problem. And I think by episode 3, Anakin was trying to tap a little into the dark side as well.
I was wondering, especially, like, you know, there's times where I think he got irritated and he had it under control enough.
Yeah, because he was kind of like, you know, you have fear and you have anger, but you don't use them. So he obviously wasn't really totally tapping into the dark side, but, It was his aggression, though.
Yeah. So, that's still a tough one. I mean, we got to go by George's. He's the father of it all, so we have to go with his explanation. But
I think we could go with a little bit of yours, though. Is that it depends on who you're matching up. Because if you get somebody who's not as strong in the light side, but somebody who's really strong in the dark side, then obviously the dark side is going to win. But if you're actually going which side is stronger, then you're taking the whole actual skills of the combatant out of it. I
just thought of another Duel of the Fates. I can't wait for next week.
Ooh, look at that. You heard it here first.
Yep.
Next week's Duel of the Fates was conceived right here in front of you guys' eyes, and I don't even know what it is.
Yep.
All right, well.
But I think that's our show for today.
It is. I think that's our show for today. Remember, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, get the notification bell so you guys know, whenever we're releasing a new video. Because we're going to actually be releasing a lot of them pretty soon. We got reviews coming. We got different kinds of Star Wars shows coming. We love talking to you guys, so don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section below. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Darryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.